Dylan got it bumping. Dylan got it bumping.
Oh yeah, here we go. We back again, you all. Thank you all for jumping in. It's your boy Attorney Cal. Y'all probably hearing that a lot more now because I'm constantly being on and posting different things with our social media team. Feels good to be back to talk to you all about protecting your art. Before we jump in, if you all want to download the guide that I'll be using today, you can go to beatstars.world/protect-your-art. I kind of got that memorized now. And you all can go in and actually look at everything and use what I'm using. I'm using the same exact thing you all will be using. So make sure you go to www.beatstars.world/protect-your-art. And let's jump in here with some shout outs. Let's see what we got in the building. We have Louis Aponte. What's up? We got Lower Way Productions 50/50. We got A6 Giddy. We got 4K Got It Official. We got Cloud9 Music. We got, let's see who this is. I Am Just Diamond. We got DP is with me. You with me. What else we got in here? Guadaluca. Fantastic Beats. We got Miles Got Beats. We got Eighth Life _ Let's see. Mimi Poon. Guadaluca Beats. NRG BS. Demores Beats. Ricky Daddy. Got Booth on the beat. What we got in here? Okay. So with that being said, everybody, let's kind of just jump in and regroup. First of all, thank you all for tuning in. This is Protect Your Art. I am Attorney Cal, and what we're gonna do today is kind of more so a recap, right? So since we first got started, we touched on so many topics, right? We talked about intellectual property as it pertains to everything, right? Copyrights, trademarks, just all of these different things, right? And then we also talked a little bit about how to protect your intellectual property through licensing, whether it be non-exclusive and exclusive licenses. So we just talked about a lot of different things, lawyers, managers, and agents, all of these things. But before we get into like a season 2 of, new topics, we want to make sure that we get everybody in here and we kind of cover all of the things we talked about, let you all ask some questions. And then at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to ask, I wrote down some questions, so we'll have a little couple questions that we'll use, and we'll give away some promo credits and things like that for you all. So let's do this. We got a PowerPoint. We can go ahead and get that queued up. And then with our PowerPoint, what we'll do is we got a little video, so we'll watch that first. Managers. How much does a manager cost, right? So this varies, right? You have where it says 5 to 15%. I've seen 20%. I've seen 25. I've seen 30. In my opinion, over 30, at that point, that's tough, right? But it really depends on the relationship you have with your manager. One thing that I will say about the fees that managers have, they differ based on artists, right? They differ based on producers. Don't be giving up ownership of your stuff, right? So if you own all your license or your masters, don't be assigning over, and that goes with lawyers too. Don't be assigning. First of all, lawyers not supposed to take ownership of anything as it relates to transactions, right? So you shouldn't be doing that. But as it pertains to lawyers and managers on a basic level, right? Don't be giving up ownership of your works, right? Your masters or your publishing, all of these things, that you own, right? These copyrights that you own in exchange for representation by a lawyer or manager. Doesn't make sense. You don't have to do that. And there's great lawyers and managers out there who will work with you for a fee, but won't even take ownership in nothing that you do, right? They'll only take a fee. So definitely think about that. Yes, sir. So that essentially what we can get the PowerPoint pulled up too. What that talked about in that particular clip, the last time we talked about the roles of lawyers, managers, and agents. So essentially, we all kind of know like a lawyer does this, a manager does this, and an agent. And that clip was just saying that no matter what you do, right, when you're working with these lawyers and you work with these managers and these agents, you shouldn't be assigning over rights and ownership to your creative work or your intellectual property in exchange for representation. What does that mean, Attorney Cal? I see a lot of times where people say, hey, can you check this management agreement out for me? Or can you check this agreement out for me? I'm thinking about, and I look in the agreement and I see, oh, they're signing over all their master. They're signing over a percentage of their publishing just so this person can be their manager. And a lot of times you'll also see people, they're doing these things and they're paying the manager or they're paying the agent, you know, when that's typically not how it's structured. So always, consider that. Think about that when you're looking at lawyers, managers, and agents. If you want to check it out, you can actually go back. And for everybody that's in here, make sure that you're sending this link out to all of your people. Post this on your social media so we can get as many people that, in here as possible right now, so they can get this knowledge and so we can all grow together. We can go to the next slide. So this is protecting your intellectual property recap. So when we first started, right, the first thing we started doing was talking about how people got started. So in this picture, it's a collage of all of the different things that we talked about, right? We talked about how to own your copyrights, your trademarks, owning your name. We talked about different types of contracts, licensing agreements, work for hire agreements. We talked about the difference between a record label and a music publisher. Then we, like I said, we summed everything up talking about lawyers, managers, and agents. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go in and we're going to also hit some of the key points in those topics. And then we'll also talk a little bit about some of the questions that you all have. I have a question coming up here with Bufo. Is it common to see managers on the splits of a record? Well, the thing with that is a manager essentially, typically in management contracts, and this is a great question, a manager is automatically getting a split, right? So a manager is getting 20% of what an artist is getting, right? So for example, I'm just saying 20% of the fee. Say the manager is taking 20% on everything that the artist makes. So that could be publishing, that could be on the recording side, that could be on merchandise sales, that could be on touring, that could be on other brand and licensing deals, which uses the likeness of the producer or the artist. Typically, the manager will have that type of deal, so they would get their monies at the end once everything is tallied up. So to actually put them in a position to where they're on the splits, it makes sense, but at the same time, either way it goes, they're getting their percentage at the end. However, you bring up a good point, which is if a manager is already getting compensated in the entirety of everything, right, at the end when they add up everything in the pot, they shouldn't be getting that split as well, right? Because at that point now they're taking more than what they're actually, entitled to based on that agreement. So that's a great thing to kind of point out and to always, try to make sure you're looking for it. All right, so we can go to our next slide. Let's jump in the next slide and see. So we always start off with this. And for anybody that's new here, I kind of wanted to make this in a class format, right? Because we all go to school, we all have learned and did different things. But I think what's important here is to just make sure that we have like this university type environment where it's like you all are learning and you're able to take what you learn and actually use that to facilitate your success. So the purpose of this course is to introduce students to the legal, business, and creative aspects of the entertainment industry. Entertainment law consists of a broad array of core legal issues combined with the relationship issues that relate to producing and processing entertainment products and talent. What does that mean, Attorney Kyle? This is straight from my law school class. Essentially, music business, right? So it's not music, it's not business. It's a merger of both. And what you have when you merge those two things, you have licensing deals, right? You have to figure out, should I copyright all my beats or should I just copyright this one? Do I need this producer agreement? Do I need this? Should I do a work for hire agreement? What are all of my legal rights? What about my name and likeness? What about me putting out merch? When I go and I do something on Instagram, does Instagram own my work or am I just licensing it to them, right? So when you're doing all of these different things, the purpose of Protect Your Art is just to kind of peek around those corners for you and kind of give you, some topics and ideas of things that you may potentially face in the future. And when you do face those things, I want you to be able to go back and look at all of the different videos that we have, and also look at the handouts and say, okay, when is it best to do X, Y, and Z? Let me go to the week where we talked about that. All right, I know what I need to do. I know my next move is. And then if you get stuck, like I always tell you all, just hit me up in the DMs at Attorney Cal, and I'll try to, help you all and point you all in the right direction. You know what I mean? So that's the purpose of Protect Your Art. We can go to the next, the actual next slide as well. So this is your Protecting Your Art intellectual property recap. So for everybody that's here, right, this is a great refresher. We're going to talk about intellectual property, right? We're going to talk about patents, copyrights, trademarks, secrets, registering, monetizing your copyrights, registering, monetizing your trademarks, power music publishing, sound recordings, right? Things you should include in your agreement. The most important agreements you should know, record labels and music publishers, right? All of these different things, we're going to briefly hit them. So if you all have questions, right, as far as based on the law of the music while we're going through, stop me, or if something I say sparks your interest, just stop me and we'll make sure that we get it knocked out. This is 4K Got It Official. Can we ask questions regarding music law in general, or just today's topics? Definitely ask general questions, right? This is your time to just ask away, like ask an attorney, right? So like, I'm at y'all's disposal. So if you got a question or something that's bothering you, or you just want to know more of a legal aspect of it as it pertains to the music industry and music law, definitely feel free to ask away. My boy Legendary Poet just joined in. Each one teach one. Yes, sir. So, all right, let's jump in here. And if you need the handout that I have, it's at www.beatstars.world/protect-your-art. That's www.beatstars.world/protect-your-art. And you can follow along with what I'm talking about and ask questions if you have them. So the first thing, right, let's talk about this. You see now with all of these different people, right, we're seeing a whole bunch of stuff. Like the other day, right, I was on Mondays, right, when I get up on Mondays, one of the first things that I do, because my role in BeatStars, I go in and I actually take like a couple hours and I just read everything, right? Not only do I read everything, I read, okay, what artists are doing good on the charts, right? What producers are doing good on the charts? What technology is coming out? Who did this? Who did that? What licensing things are popping? Like what deals are happening? Everything that's legal, right? And one of the things that I saw was FaZe Clan, right? I don't know if you all know of FaZe Clan, but FaZe Clan is going public, backed by a SPAC, right? I think that's special purpose acquisition company or something like that for $1 billion, right? So essentially, it's like FaZe Clan is the first company really of its type that has been able to garner this much attention, right? And the reason why is because of their intellectual property, right? I was talking to a friend named Zach, and he's also my business partner in a couple of ventures. And he said, "Man, did you know that we were talking about, man, Offset has some interest in FaZe Clan, right?" He was saying, "Yeah, they signed Bronny, right? Bronny James." So we were talking about all of these different things, and one of the first things that I thought about, which makes FaZe Clan valuable, right, is their intellectual property, right? So when you think about intellectual property, you're thinking about the types of IP, right? You're thinking about how to value IP, and you're thinking about protecting that IP. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is any product of human intellect that the law protects from unauthorized use by others. Ownership of intellectual property creates a limited monopoly in a protected property. So when we think about FaZe Clan, right? FaZe Clan, right? They have, what you think about, they probably have some type of copyright. So some of the content and all these things that they create, the same way you all create all these different things, right? They have intellectual property that they create. They file a copyright registration on that intellectual property, right? And then they own that intellectual property, and nobody else can use it without getting a license from them, right? If you want to use anything that relates to FaZe Clan, you have to license their cool, and because they own that, they can charge a fee. Now, one of the things that we talk about all the time, and you all hear me say this a lot, is your intellectual property is no different than a piece of real estate, right? So the same way someone has, a piece of rental property, and they take that rental property and they have 1,000 rooms, right? Or 1,000 apartments, and they charge $1,000 for each apartment. Apartment prices are going up, so it's probably $2,000 by now since we start saying in the beginning. Then at that point, they're able to generate $2,000 times 1,000. That's $1,000,000. So when you have intellectual property, you have to think about it as apartment, right? You have to think about it as real estate. And FaZe Clan has a certain amount of real estate, and that real estate generates a certain amount of money, meaning it has a certain value. The next thing that you have to think about when you think about intellectual property is trademarks, right? FaZe Clan, right? The way that the actual title of FaZe Clan, the logo of FaZe Clan, the colors of FaZe Clan, right? All of the things that they have, their brand, the things that they built, the fact that people know their name, the things that people think about FaZe Clan is a part of their brand, which is a part of their trademark, right? And that trademark, right, is what values them, or it gives their brand a certain amount of value. And when you're valuing intellectual property, you're thinking about that value on top of how much money they're generating using their copyrights or using that trademark. And then you're thinking about trade secrets, right? You're thinking about all the different things that they do that we don't even really know that make them successful. That's also a part of their intellectual property. So, Attorney Cal, how does that relate to what I'm doing as a producer or what I'm doing as an artist? It relates because you are no different, right? You have a brand. You have a producer name, right? You have a producer tag. You have all of the intellectual property that you're creating, right? All of your different beats with all of the different licenses and everything that you have working for yourself. That's your intellectual property, and it's valuable, and it's super valuable. And the thing about the reason why it's important to compare your intellectual property to real estate is because every piece of real estate is unique. I think a lot of times people don't understand that when you create a song, right, if you take a piece of that song and you drop a piece of that song by itself, now you created another part which is also unique, right? Which is sometimes called a derivative work. But what I'm saying is every piece of intellectual property that you create, right, that's something that's unique. And basically what you can do is you have one parent, and from that parent or one beat, you can create so many different things. It's just like having a loop, having a chord, or having a melody. You taking that one thing, right, and you creating all of these different things. You taking your one license and you're licensing that out non-exclusively, and that non-exclusive license, which is the origin, is being licensed out to so many people, and it's creating so many different things. And all of those different things have their own, essentially their own copyright. So that's important because your intellectual property is forever growing, and you have to protect it as such. Speaking of protecting your intellectual property and how we protect it, right? We want to make sure we're thinking about registering our copyrights, right? So when we think about registering our copyrights, we always talk about this. And this will be a question at the end. And you all will be able to get some promo credits based on it. But when do you have a copyright? All right. A lot of times we think about, man, I need to do this. I need to mail something to myself. But by now, as much as we talk, as many videos you see me clapping on saying, it's your boy Attorney Cal, you all should know by now how it goes as it pertains to registering a copyright. What you have to think about is as soon as you have your idea in a fixed form, right, you have an automatic copyright. However, until you actually file your copyright, you don't have a copyright, right? You have a copyright, but you can't enforce that copyright. So that's very, very important. In order to monetize and make sure that you're able to enforce your rights that you are automatically given, you have to make sure that you have what's called copyright registration, right? Let's jump in here and let's see what kind of questions we got. Okay, got it. Let's see. My question. I think will help other producers. Should labels get a percentage of the songwriting and publishing for beat rearrangement? That's a great question. So you want my personal opinion on that? I think that's a tricky question because when you think about labels, right? most labels have, like, say I'm label A, right? And we talked about this, and we'll jump into this when we get into the power of music publishing and sound recordings. Um, Label A typically has publisher A. So either way it goes, if they have an artist that they help on this side, who's also a writer, and that writer is signed to their publishing, then they're going to eat off of that some type of way. I think the better answer to your question is artists have to understand, producers have to understand that they're not only artists, but they're also writers, right? They're not only artists or writers, but they're performers, right? And because they're performers, you also have value in your likeness, right? Your name, so you can do deals and all these different things, which also gives you value with merch and anything that you want to do outside of the necessary function of creating music. I say that because a lot of times what you'll see, and we talked about this previously, you'll see what's called a 360 deal. I think that a 360 deal puts you in a position to where a label is not only getting a percentage from, as Bufo talked about earlier, on the sound recording side, but like you're speaking of, they're getting a percentage on the publishing and songwriting side. They're getting a percentage on the touring side. They're getting a percentage on the merchandise side, and all of the things that you do with your likeness, right? So it's important that you understand as a producer and as an artist that that is a possibility, right? The label can get a percentage on everything that you do, including songwriting, but because you know your value and you understand each of those things should be negotiated separately, you'll make it so like, hey, if you're getting a piece on my songwriting, then you're not getting that same piece on my sound recording or my merch or my touring. All of those things are separate, and therefore they should be negotiated separately. And for the most part, I should own all of that stuff and be licensing that to you, right? So it's super important. Miles got beats. What's up, Miles? If you have a publishing admin agreement, do I still have to register those songs with the MLC? Great question. So for you all, that may not know what the MLC or the Mechanical Licensing Collective is, they're essentially a free service that if you sign up with, they'll basically help you collect mechanical royalties. The reason why this is important is because a lot of times I run into a lot of producers and artists that say, "Oh, I got ASCAP, I got BMI, but I don't, so I'm good, right? I don't need pub admin." No, that's wrong. ASCAP and BMI, because of the consent decrees that were set by the federal government, cannot collect mechanical royalties, right? So what was happening was a lot of times artists and producers would be collecting on their performance side, right? The publishing and the songwriting. However, they would not be collecting the mechanicals, which are also significant amounts of revenue. So what you got to think about is how could, since the government was essentially regulating the performance side, they basically created what a coalition, the Mechanical Licensing Collective, to provide a free way for artists to get their mechanicals, right? So if you have a pub admin, what their role is to basically take care of all of these things, right? Make sure your compositions are not only being registered, so you can collect your performance royalties, which are your songwriting and your publishing, but they're also making sure that you're collecting your mechanical royalties and collecting all of this stuff from every territory, right? And in that instance, depending on the deal, right, you shouldn't have to register with the MLC because it's your pub admin's job to do all of these things for you, right? So that's a super good question, and I'm glad that you asked that. Let's see, Grandtastic Beats. Do we have to submit every beat to? I thought that as soon as you create the project file, that it's copyrighted, that it is the copyright proof ownership. So yeah, you're right. When you create a beat, right, in a project file and it's in a fixed form, you have what's called a copyright, right? Automatic copyright. What I'm explaining though is, say somebody takes that beat, they rip it down offline off YouTube or whatever it may be, and they use that beat. And if you don't have an actual copyright registration, you can't sue them to get what's owed to you, right? So it's very important that you kind of think about step 1 and 2 and just saying like, okay, you have that automatic copyright already. The registration part and registration piece is just to make sure that one, you're putting the world on notice, and two, that in the event that someone steals your work, you can actually sue them. Also, too, what I always speak about is statutory damages, right? So when you have a proper copyright registration at the proper time and someone steals your work, you're entitled to up to $150,000 per infringement, right? So every time they steal your work, you're entitled to up to $150,000 per infringement, but you have to make sure you have filed a copyright registration and that's been done in a timely manner. So that's super important, right? And that leads me to my next topic, which is registering, monetizing trademarks. It is the same exact thing, right, as registering your copyrights, except for your trademarks. Your trademarks essentially is like, okay, all of y'all producers in here, right? Y'all all have y'all names, where y'all tapping in at. Y'all all have your producer tag. You all have things that people know you by, right? So that's your brand, right? That's what puts the world on notice, right? It's no different than Amazon or McDonald's or even BeatStars, right? It's just like something that basically the entire world knows you by. At that point, right, you're generating income and you're monetizing that. That's important so that you're able to make sure that you're putting the world on notice and you have a registered trademark. Now, what that trademark does is it allows you to carve out that specific name, or it allows you to carve out that specific brand or a specific image that represents your brand, that only you can use, right? So if somebody wants to use it, the same way they have to license your beats, they would have to license your tag, or they would have to license the image that you use that represents your brand. So it's the same thing. And basically, you want to make sure that you're registering this in the same manner and capacity as if you're registering a copyright. All right, we got a question. Hey, how can I collect royalties for a song on YouTube that was made with a free for profit beat of mine? The song got 16 million plays, and my beat collaborator ain't got nothing. The artist doesn't answer me, so I can use BeatStars Publishing to get my royalties in any other ways. Great question. So his question is, basically, they're trying to figure out how do they monetize a free for profit beat. They had a song with a free for profit beat. The song had 16 million and they haven't received any payment. And the artist won't reach back to them. First advice that I would give you, and we talk about this a lot, is to make sure that when you're, whatever beats that you're using or you're putting out, also distribute those beats, because at that point, if they're original tracks and you distribute them, put content ID on them. So at the point when they're placed on YouTube, someone rips your beat or uses it, that content ID tag will also make sure that you get paid. The second advice that I would give you too is, okay, if you have 16 million plays on a song, then likely you'll probably owe some mechanical royalties, you'll owe some publishing. As far as your streaming numbers, that would be something that you're owed as well. BeatStars Publishing, essentially, as a pub admin, can work with you to protect your underlying composition, and your underlying composition is being used in that YouTube video along with the audio recording and the visual, whatever it may be. So definitely, if you sign up and basically give us more information, we'll definitely point you in the right direction and try to help you as best as we can, because that's important as a publisher, that we make sure that you're taken care of. And not only are you taken care of, but you understand how the process works, as it pertains to after the fact is done. It just showing you like some preventative things you can do in the front to make sure that you get paid in the beginning. But definitely always, try your hardest when you're putting stuff out. Distribute it. Put that content ID on there, so when people are using your stuff, you can monetize that. When you tell them free for profit, though, aren't you basically telling them that they're good to blow it up at 16 if you aren't owed anything? Great question. Your free for profit, you have to, and I think Grandtastic Beats makes a great point. You have to specify in your licenses or whatever you may say, free for profit what, right? Because with free for profit, a lot of times it's just like a basic non-exclusive license. You can only get 25,000 streams, and then you have to negotiate and buy a license, right? So with your free for profit, if it's not clear on what they can and can't do, then they can always say, hey, you said free for profit, so I can do whatever I want with this beat without having to pay or any repercussions to you at all. So that's also a great point. The way you term and couch different things with language, you have to make sure that you let them know your expectations. And sometimes the best thing to do, if you want people to use your beats, um, but you still want to make sure that you have some level of control, right, as it pertains to protecting your intellectual property, let them know like, hey, this is free, non-profit use, but as it pertains to making profit, you need to get a license. And that license will dictate and specify how much money or how many streams, how many videos, how many this and that until they have to pay you a certain amount of money. Right. That makes perfect sense. Exactly. That is why I would never do a free for profit unless a contract that allows them for 2,500 views or something cap. Right. Um, that's important, right? So you just have to make sure that you go in and you look. And one of the cool things that you can do is just direct them like, hey, look, this is free, nonprofit, right? However, in the event that you generate any revenues, any royalties, or anything, you or intend to make profit, you should purchase, a non-exclusive or exclusive license here and just drop your BeatStars link. And then at that point, you put them on notice, right, that they need to do that. And then if you have a publisher in place and this happens again, then a publisher could do a couple things. They can get it pulled down. They can actually go in and try to monetize what's owed to you, right? Or they can reach out on your behalf and negotiate with them to make sure that you're getting any of those royalties or revenues that they've generated, right? So that's all of the things that you want to do to make sure you're good to go. So the next thing, right? The registering, monetizing, and the power of music publishing. Now we kind of y'all are asking great questions because they're leading up into the next topics. So let's take this situation. Let's take this and I think it's sharpness beats. Let's take this situation and talk about registering, monetizing, and the power of music publishing, and then we'll also talk about registering, monetizing, and the power of sound recordings, right? So Sharpness Beats has this song, right? They take their next track. They understand now this particular song that they have is a sound recording, right? So it's what you hear. And then it's also a composition, right? The DNA, are you getting money on the sound recording side? So that's all the stuff you get from YouTube, right? Or Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal, all these different things. But you're also entitled money on the publishing side. Right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that in the beginning, when you're registering all your songs, you're registering them properly, right? When I say register, that also includes like making sure that you have everything into your portal. If it's your BeatStars publishing portal, when you're trying to monetize all this stuff, making sure when you distribute everything, you have it online on Spotify, Apple Music, and all these different places. And then at that point, you're selecting this is original track. You want to make sure that you put content ID on it. And what you're going to see happen is when you sell those non-exclusive licenses and people are now going in, or people is pulling your track down, right, and they're actually using it and repurposing it in their own particular things, what you will see is on the power of music publishing and sound recording, right, you'll start generating different types of revenue, right? You'll generate mechanical royalties. You'll generate performance and songwriting performance, which is songwriting and publishing. You'll also generate royalties or revenues just based on the fact that on YouTube content ID is actually monetizing any ads ran on those tracks. So that's very important when you're thinking about the power of music publishing and the power of sound recordings, right? Super important, super critical, and I think it's important to kind of always think about, okay, worst case scenario, if someone rips this beat, how am I going to get paid? Because there's going to be times, and I read an article, right? And for all of our people that's in publishing, you'll likely be getting this information too. But I read an article that talks about how, 30% of people still rip stuff, still steal songs. Now, if you think about that, we got all these free sites where it be YouTube, you can go listen to music on Spotify ad supported, you can go listen to music on Amazon, with Alexa, with Pandora, and 30% of people still say that they rip music. So what you have to think about is at a certain point, your music is likely going to get ripped. But the reason why this is called protecting your intellectual property is because you want to have all of these different things done in the event that your music gets ripped. You want to make sure you have a copyright, right? You want to make sure that copyright is registered, right? You want to make sure that particular track is registered. Whether it's distributed, you have it distributed, you have it in your publishing portal or whatever it may be. So you're monetizing it with Content ID, so you're able to get all of these different things at the end, and that puts you in a position to protect your intellectual property and protect your art. Let's see. I saw something in here. To me, a free for profit beat simply means you can put it to profit, but you're not paying for it up front. So basically, a free lease. Gotta have a license though. Alan Groover. Essentially, yeah. I mean, it depends on the language, right? So, for example, if there's no language there that specifies how free for profit, they can really just do whatever they want to do with it, because it's like, okay, no language here. But if there's more language and it talks about, okay, this is free for profit, but I own all the publishing, or this free for profit, but I own 50% of the publishing, I own 3% or 50% of the master, whatever you bring in, then what you want to think about is having a license versus not having a license. Now, I'm an attorney, so I'm always in favor of having things written down, agreements or contracts. But I think it's important to always remember that have to balance, okay, free non-for-profit or free for profit based on how you structure your business and what works for you. But I always advise to non-for-profit, and then if you want to make profit on it, just purchase a license, right? And even if you talk to them, you can give them a deal. But it's best to have a license, because you could get yourself in a situation where the song has 1 billion views and it's like, oh, free for profit. So now you're not receiving, and that could be the biggest song of your career, and you just lost out on it, right? So I think you kind of got to think about that. Now, the next thing is the most important terms you should include in your agreements, right? Let's talk about that, right? We already kind of went over that, but I want to highlight two of them. The first thing is you want to talk about whether or not this is exclusive, non-exclusive, right? Meaning you can only have this agreement with me, or I can have this particular agreement with everybody else, right? You also want to talk about ownership and control. A lot of times in agreements, whether especially in the music industry, because there's money involved or this involved or that involved and numbers involved, two of the most important things is this exclusive and non-exclusive, and who owns what? Because a lot of times owning the master or owning the publishing or owning the composition, there won't be no number by it, right? Well, sometimes with the publishing or whatever it may be, there'll be a number by it based on the fact of, okay, I own this particular amount of your publishing. But for the most part, when you're thinking about ownership, right, there's typically no number by it. So what happens is people just assign over anything, right? They assign over their right, their copyright. They assign over ownership of their publishing. They assign over their songwritership. They're assigning over all these different rights in perpetuity, which means forever, even after this deal expires, right? So at that point, when you go out to get a new deal, or you go out and negotiate a pub admin deal, and you want your new publisher who's trying to give you maybe an advance, or they're trying to help you, but they realize after you look at your old agreement, it's just like all of the biggest songs you did before you came to us, we can't even collect on them because this person has ownership, control, or either or both. So it's really important to make sure you understand whether or not an agreement is non-exclusive or exclusive, and who has ownership and control in that agreement. The next thing you want to always look to is the fees, right? You need to be making sure that the fees are right. For the producer agreements, if you do a producer agreement with a label, typically you're looking from anywhere. I always try to go from 2 to 5% for the producer fee. Now, when you're thinking about your publishing, right, if it's you and an artist on the track, y'all already know this. Go for 50% of the pub. If it's, and your fee is going to vary, but make sure you're always looking to have 100% of your mechanical royalties. You're having 2 to 5% for the producer fee. If it's just you and the artist, go for 50% of the pub, and whatever fee you feel comfortable with as it pertains to selling, a license, right? Or selling an exclusive, or even a work for hire, right? The next thing that you want to think about, work for hire agreements, right? When you do a work for hire agreement, and we talk about this a lot, essentially in a work for hire agreement, you're selling, right, the rights to that particular master, not your composition, right? So you want to make sure that you have um, rights to sell your master, but you want to retain the underlying composition. The reason why that's important is, but if you, so long as you retain the underlying composition, you can keep continuing to create works or derivative works like we talked about earlier based on that composition. So for example, you sell an exclusive, but there's a part of that composition that you created that somebody wants to come and sample. So long as that doesn't offend the contract that you entered into to sell the exclusive, then you can allow for that sample. All right. So that's super important. And I think, as a producer, you want to consider those things. And I want you all to take, after this video goes out, I want you all to be my spokespeople to the world and take the portion of this out of what I'm saying right now and put it out there. And we may run over maybe 2 to 5 minutes, but I just want to say this. The most important and powerful clause that you producers and you artists have when you're dealing with labels, when you're dealing with artists, when you're dealing with publishers, whoever you may be dealing with, right? Say you signed a distribution deal or a record deal with somebody, and they not trying to pay you. They're not trying to tell you how much you've earned. They're not telling you anything. They're not giving you anything. I see many times where artists talk about how they haven't been paid. One of the most important things that you have, and you have to negotiate it to where it makes sense. That's something that I do, right? You have the right to audit and you have the right to an accountant. Attorney Cal, what does that mean? When you go in and you negotiate a producer royalty, when you go in and you negotiate, and a lot of times you'll see this PPD, which is the percentage of whatever you're supposed to get on a particular track on the master side, you have to make sure, or you negotiate a royalty for an overall deal, you have to make sure, what I like to call it is, protect your points. For example, it doesn't make sense to negotiate a split on the master side if you can't protect them, right? If you can't go in and look and say, all right, how am I going to make sure that I get my points? The way to do that is to have a check. And that check is the right to audit. So in that right to audit and accounting, that should tell you, okay, so I can confirm to make sure that I'm getting paid. I need to be able to audit your books at least once a year, and basically go for a 3-year time span. So from the time they give you that statement, I should be able to contest that statement. From that time, I should be able to bring somebody in to look at that particular clause, and I should be able to, within the same 3 months, file a suit if I'm not paid or compensated properly. The biggest thing that all artists and producers have to realize and understand, when you're thinking about this, you're going to get in a situation and you're going to get offered a record label, record deal, or whatever it may be. Tell your lawyer, what is the auditing language in this thing say? How am I protected in the event that I can't verify how much royalties or what I'm owed on the producer, on the sound recording side? How much time do we have to audit? What is this language? This language is so important, and most times it's at the end of an agreement, it's attachment, it's this and it's that. But when artists talk about not being paid, one of the best things that you can do and focus in on is your right to audit. 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 Think about your right to audit. If you got a friend, you got anybody that you know that's doing a deal, tell them, hey man, tell your lawyer to pull your contract and look at your right to audit. Even if you are getting paid, you feel what I'm saying? Right to audit. I always think about your right to audit. Yeah, kind of went on the tangent there, but exactly. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? So why buy exclusive if they still need to? So people just want to own stuff, right? It's the difference between buying a car and paying a mortgage payment and doing a lease. Not a mortgage payment, a monthly payment, because it's just, I want to own it, right? I want it to be mine. I don't want to have to feel like I got to give it back or somebody else can drive it. If I want to let somebody else drive it, it'll be somebody in my family, or I'll put it on Toro or whatever it may be. But it's actual, it's like I want to feel like I'm the only person that has this beat. Plus, I don't want everybody using this. And I think in the Atlanta scene, I grew up I was born in Augusta, Georgia, but I grew up in Atlanta. I think about it now, and I feel like there was a bunch of non-exclusive licensing going on because a lot of songs had the same beats, but now you don't really hear that. And dealing with other producers, right? What you're seeing is most times people want an exclusive because they want to have the uniqueness. They want to have that first use. They want to have the right to put it out first. So that's essentially why people come and they do what they do. Um, Sound Exchange is different than the publishing, right? Sound Exchange is on the sound recording side, right? So, if I'm not mistaken, when you distribute through BeatStars, there's an option to select Sound Exchange when you're distributing your stuff, as we talked about monetizing in the beginning. So that allows you to be protected, not only to make sure that Sound Exchange is collecting those digital royalties, right? So the royalties that come in from SiriusXM or Pandora that are non-interactive. Interactive streaming is when you're listening to it and you're choosing the songs, and non-interactive streaming is where it's in like a playlist or shuffle mode, or even if it's ad supported, right? Registering it with Sound Exchange, make sure that you get those particular internet or non-interactive streaming royalties, right? Yep, that's true, right? Um, Basically, it's smart to write your own lyrics and make your beats because at that point, you can control the publishing and you can also control the sound recording side. Give you a prime example, right? Kanye West. It's no coincidence that he stopped being just a producer and changed to an artist because he realized that I can control this whole record. Michael Jackson did the same thing, right? He started to control the whole record. So he would control the publishing side, or if he had people on the as writers, he would say, how much you want for your pub? They would sell it. So he would control the whole pub, and then he would control the majority of the songwriter side, right? So I mean the sound recording side. So that's super important and super critical. Um, and I want you all to think about that. Like, okay, how can you control both sides? One of the ways you can control both sides, and I'm not a marketing person, but if you're putting something out on Spotify, right? Say you got a beat tape, you hit up all these artists. Hey man, jump on this. 50-50 split on all the songs. So at that point, now you got 50% on the sound recording side, and you got 50% on the publishing side. But if you don't facilitate on the sound recording side, right? You just sit back and like, I'm just gonna collect my publishing, you know, then at that point, you're losing where you could be gaining. Let's see. A bunch of questions. Copyright.gov, the only place to obtain and submit registration proof of your beats. And are there any good videos of someone going through the submission? I tried years ago and it was confusing. The site was outdated. Great observation. This site is very outdated, right? And that's the most of the federal government stuff because they try to keep it the same. So, like, no matter what age range, like a person that's already experienced it, they should be able to go back 20 years and just keep it simple. But sometimes things that are too simple are very difficult. However, there's a person affiliate that we work with named Cosign, right? Cosign.com, COSYND, right? And there should be a video coming out with me actually going through this, talking to you all about how to register a copyright because I just did the voiceover with Jamil. But if you go to cosign.com /BeatStars, let me see how that works. This place, they walk you through. The questions are super simple. I think they don't charge you. I think it's like a couple, like maybe $20 extra or whatever for their services for filing, but it's not expensive. And also too, like you can get up to 10 songs on one application. So for example, say you want to like do 10 beats or do a whole tape that you're about to put out. You can get all 10 of those on one application and it won't cost you like nothing crazy. So I just would recommend you check Cosign out. All right. And the last thing is record labels and music publishers, right? As we talked about earlier, we have to always think about the differences between the sound recording side and your compositional side. The record label, right? ABC Records is making sure that you're getting paid those streaming royalties. They're making sure that you're getting paid Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora Interactive, Tidal, Amazon, all of these different places. And your publisher, right, is making sure that every time the sound recording or the things that people hear gets played, then we're collecting on the DNA of all those things, right? So if you got a 50% split on track A, right, on the publishing side as a writer, then your publisher, their job is to make sure that every time that song gets streamed, that's accounted for and that you collect based on whatever your share of that composition, right? So that's important to differentiate. A record label is basically their job is to do marketing and promotion, to make sure that they're monetizing the sound recorders. And the publisher's job is essentially make sure that, not only outside of you being a performer or artist, but you're also considered a writer. Because you're considered a writer, that's separate intellectual property that also must be accounted for and to make sure that you're getting paid. Let me see. Let me see. If there are any producers who do not use drum loops or samples or any loops, please contact me. I pay for beats. I'm just not paying anymore, paying for any beats with loops or samples because I can't make any. Yep. So we're updating the producer contracts, so you'll be able to see places with points. So you'll be able to basically, when you do an exclusive, you'll be able to get points on the master. So stay tuned for that. And then you can always make sure that when you go into a producer agreement, you could type in a little section and just say, hey, producers shall also receive whatever fee, right, of the all revenues generated on the sound recording side. And then basically just say like, hey, distribute it with BeatStars or wherever and just make me a collaborator, give me my 3 to 5% and just flip it like that. That's something that you could do. So yeah. I tried to join Sound Exchange and they see the Sound Exchange cover Instagram and TikTok royalties. Sound Exchange is essentially what Sound Exchange does is they collect the royalties from internet radio or non-interactive streaming. So like Sirius XM, Pandora, even like things that where your music is played. It's not invite only, and if you distribute with BeatStars, we'll make sure that your music gets to them and also that you get paid whenever that happens. Now, when you're thinking about Instagram and TikTok, that's also on the sound recording side. And when you distribute, that money is paid out just as if it's a Spotify stream, YouTube stream, Apple Music stream, Tidal stream. So sound recording, all of that's on the sound recording, but those are interactive, right? Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Tidal. Typically, for your sound exchange that's non-interactive, they're not invite only. And if you work with BeatStars, you should be able to become a member automatically. So, let's see. Is co-sign for U.S. producers, artists, or is available worldwide? They should be able to help you worldwide, and if they can't help you in the States for some or wherever you're at, located somewhere, they'll basically put you in the right direction as to like what you need to do in that particular territory. For example, I had a gentleman who I was working with, and he was saying like, I want to copyright my music in a certain part of Africa. And what ended up happening, he reached out to co-sign, and they told him like, based on the law here, you basically have a copyright, and you don't have to do X, Y, Z as if you were in the United States. So definitely reach out to them and ask them. All right, we can go to the next slide. Let's get y'all some producer credits. All right, I hope everybody's still up. I didn't bore y'all too much. All right, in the chat, if you type, the first question is, what is the difference between an exclusive and non-exclusive license? If you drop that answer in the chat, I'm going to randomly just scroll up and pick somebody. If you have the right answer, I'm going to take your information down and make sure that you have, get your promo credit. So go, what is the difference between an exclusive and non-exclusive license? First person that I see is going to get the points. Mark Papers, lease versus owner 100%. It's going to be you. So, yes, that's the difference. Mark Papers, could you please drop your BeatStars profile name or here, or you can DM it to me at Attorney Cal, and I'll make sure that you get your promo credits. Please drop Mark Papers. Please drop your BeatStars profile name, and I'll make sure you get some promo credits. All right. The next question. When do you have an official copyright? First person I see to answer that correctly, they're going to get some points as well. Right. Grandtastic Beats, that's very right. As soon as you create something in a fixed form, you have an automatic copyright. Please drop your information and we'll make sure that we get you taken care of. Next question. Where can you go to easily register your copyright? 4K got it. You got it. Cosign. Please drop your information in. We're gonna get you some promo credits. I should have hit these questions because now y'all waiting on me. What is a work for hire agreement? What is a work for hire agreement, everybody? Come on, who got it? Who gonna tell me? What is a work for hire agreement? First person, what is a work for hire agreement? Who gonna tell me? Y'all gonna look it up. Y'all gonna tell me what is a work for hire agreement? First person that give me the right answer is gonna get some promo credits. What is a work for hire agreement? Okay, we got about 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. All right. So here we go. Let me see. A work for hire agreement, you sell out Jose Flores. Drop your BeatStars BeatStars profile into the thing. We're gonna get you some promo credits. I want to clarify this. With a work for a hire agreement, you're selling your rights to the master, but hold on to the rights to the composition. Don't just give that away, right? You want to make sure that you're able to hold on ownership of your composition, but you're selling rights to the beat, right? You're selling rights to that master. Number 5, what clause allows you to look at the books of a distributor or record label? What right do you have? The right to do what? First person that says it is gonna get paid. Yep, 4K got it. You already got one. Let's let somebody. Oh dang, hold on. Hold on. It wasn't in you, bro. It wasn't in you. It was Devastation 5600. Devastation 5600. Drop your information. We're gonna get you some promo credits. Please, y'all, keep dropping it. If you got a question right, keep dropping your information because I wanted to get to the bottom of the thing. And the last part, right? What is the role of a manager? What is the role of a manager? Come on, everybody. This is the last question. What is the role of a manager? What is the role of a manager? What is the role of a manager? What is the role? Grandtastic, you already got one. Let's see if we can get one more person who ain't got one. Organ sharpness, I'm going to give that to you. Organizing and planning. A manager's job is to basically make sure that you're not taking more time away from your creation process and putting it towards the organizing and planning and just making sure that you're straight. Swigger also to handle your business affairs. Sharpness, drop your BeatStars information. We're gonna make sure you get the promo credits, right? All right. So it looked like everybody who answered the question properly, keep dropping your information, in the chat. We're gonna make sure that you get your promo credits, after this. We can move to the next slide. We're gonna wrap it up. Next slide. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. We'll probably scroll up a little bit more too, so we can get number 10 or down. Yeah. There we go. So these are the next topics that we got coming up. We got LLCs and corporations in the music industry. Now I do a lot of deals and things, and I see a lot of things, and a lot of times producers don't have an LLC. They just do a lot of things in their. They do a lot of things in their. They do a lot of things in their name, but I think make sure you having an LLC and a corporation just gives you more protection. The next thing we're gonna do is talk about taxes, right? Well, that's 3 taxes, not 4. Tax tips for music producers. I'm in the process right now. One of our great team members, Alexandra Kennedy, was like, "Hey, do you know anything about taxes?" And I was like, she basically told me like this would be a good topic for you all because tax season is coming up, right? And as you know, people that have businesses that's having expenses, I want to be able to bring, somebody that's a tax professional on to talk to you about, all right, what's some things you need to do? When's the filing deadline? How can you deduct this? And like, even if y'all need you somebody who's reliable, um, her name is, I ain't gonna say her name yet because I don't know if she comes, but I hope she comes, all right? She's actually a tax person, like a tax professional. She's a certified CPA, right? But she's also an attorney. So she's a tax attorney too, right? So she's super dope, and I hope to bring her on to kind of give you all some help with that because a lot of times we see people getting jammed up with their taxes, and we don't want that for you all. The next thing is the best things you could read in the music industry. As of now, I've read 75 books this year. Last year, I read 102. And my goal for this year was 120, but don't look like I'm gonna get there. But I want to give you all a list of books, and we just talk about some of the things that I'm reading, because I'm always reading to make sure I'm my best self for BeatStars and BeatStars community. So I want to give y'all all the tips and tricks and things I read, so people can't run game on y'all. The next thing is interactive versus non-interactive streaming. So we talked about that, right? Interactive is lean in streaming. You pick what you want. Non-interactive is you don't pick what you want. It's just being played for you. The fifth thing that we're going to talk about, which should probably be number one, because I keep getting a lot of questions about this, is using loops without getting sued, right? So we have a lot of people that uses loops and doing all these different things, but when you're using these loops and you're getting these placements with these loops and you're doing all these things, we got to make sure we're looking at the licenses or terms of use for the particular use loops, so we're not getting sued. The sixth thing is having proper website legal, right? If you got your own pro page, you got all these different things. Is your terms of service up to date? Is your privacy policy up to date? What's your refund policy like? What's all the different things? What terminology do you have in your descriptions on YouTube? Is your licenses, are you directing people to the right place? Is all of these things in place? So if you have a disgruntled customer and they come back and they're like, hey, your terms of service don't say that I'm not entitled to a refund. I need that back. So we want to make sure that we got you all in a good position, have a good website legal. Copyright with cosign. So we'll talk about cosign, right? Hopefully we'll be able to, and I'll reach out to them, but we'll be able to get somebody on from cosign, right, to show us and help us walk through, like actually, going through it. And if not, I'll just go through on cosign and fake register a beat, and we'll see, how that's done. Mechanical rights and mechanical royalties. I know we were talking about the MLC, so we want to make sure that we understand what that is. Synchronization in TV and films. What should you be looking out for in these particular things? If somebody say, hey, I want to put your movie on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime, and how are they going to approach you? What's the etiquette there? What should you be looking for? And how to make sure you protect it. The last thing is, and this is super important, and if none of these other topics apply to anyone here, this applies: using artwork without properly getting sued, right? My opinion, make sure you're getting licenses for this artwork because people own this artwork. In the same way that you want to protect, register and monetize your copyright and intellectual property, people that own artwork also want to do the same thing, and you may be on the other end of them doing that. So we're going to talk a little bit about making sure that your artwork is taken care of and you're not getting sued. All right, we can go to the last slide and we'll be out of here. As I always say, if you have any questions for me, make sure you hit me up at Attorney Cal, right? On Instagram, in the DMs. I got like 7 right now that I'm going to respond to. Hopefully I can get to them tonight, but if not tonight, I'll try to get to them on Friday during the office hours. People have taken advantage. I probably talked to a couple people this year, right? They hit me up and say, hey, man, I want to set up office hours from 12 to 2. And literally, we talk about whatever they want to talk about. So it could be just music industry related. Like we're talking about the right to audit. What you think about this? Or I may even ask y'all, like, what y'all think. So definitely hit me up if you want to schedule a time to talk. And we can get into it. As I always say, right, again, if you got promo credits and you're still in here, drop your thing again. I want it at the bottom so I can make sure that I get you all compensated. But as I always say, your intellectual property is no different than a piece of real estate. So you want to make sure that when you're working hard and you're doing everything, treat your intellectual property as if it's a piece of real estate. If you got 1,000 pieces of real estate, making $2,000 a month is not 1,000 anymore because rent done went sky high, right? If you got 1,000 pieces of real estate, making $2,000 a month, you know that's $2 million. It's no different with your beats. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody jumping in. Make sure you drop your stuff at the bottom so I can help you out get some promo credits. And you all have a great rest of your evening.